I'm Dr. Jura Lasas. I'm a neurobiologist with a PhD and over 15 years of experience in clinical research and drug development. Today, I'll be answering your questions about sleep problems during menopause transition and why your sleep suddenly feels broken. Why do I wake up at 2 a.m. wide awake and wired? What is going on? There is a very interesting biology behind waking up at around 2 or 3 in the morning. Most of your deep slow wave sleep is already done by 2 a.m. So you've shifted into a lighter sleep stages that are much easier to disrupt. At the same time, your cortisol naturally begins to rise as your body prepares for the morning. There's also a metabolism piece. If you had a carb-heavy dinner or alcohol in the evening, your blood sugar can dip about 4 to 6 hours later. When that coincides with a 2 to 3 a.m. window, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to correct it. And that can jolt you awake with a racing mind and pounding heart. And the last piece is changing hormones. Because the hormone support is not stable, your brain becomes more reactive to every little internal signal that didn't bother you before. For example, a minor temperature shift, a bladder stretch, a small cortisol bump fully wake you up. Specifically, the drop in progesterone reduces the calming effect of neurotransmitter GABA, and that leaves your brain more on edge at night. About 69% of nighttime hot flashes or night sweats are linked to waking up, and most of them happen in lighter sleep stages in exactly this window, 2 to 3 a.m. Many women don't even register them as hot flashes. You just wake up, heart pounding, feeling wired, maybe a little warm, but mostly just intensely alert. And then the anxiety kicks in, and now you're lying there at 2:30 a.m. with a racing brain. Can menopause affect sleep? Short answer, yes. And it's one of the most common problems women deal with during menopause transition. About half of women in perimenopause and postmenopause report real sleep problems. We're talking about insomnia, waking up multiple times at night, or sleeping through the night and still feeling like you didn't. Since estrogen starts dropping and fluctuating, that destabilizes your internal thermostat in the brain, which is called hypothalamus. That's what drives the hot flashes and night sweats, which can wake you up and prevent you from getting enough deep rest you need. Progesterone has a calming effect on the brain through the neurotransmitter called GABA. It actually helps you fall asleep and stay asleep. It's one of the reasons why so many women describe feeling wired at night even when they're so exhausted. On top of that, melatonin and your circadian rhythm are affected with age. So you start waking up earlier or sleeping in fragments. The final piece is cortisol, which can become more erratic. Mix that with everything else, and you get that classic tired but wired feeling where your body is done, but your brain won't shut off. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. How long does menopause insomnia last? Well, this question is a little tricky as it really depends on so many things. Sleep problems tend to increase during perimenopause. That's when night awakenings and trouble staying asleep really peak. About 25 to 30% of perimenopausal women meet the clinical threshold for chronic insomnia. So what that really means is 6 or more months of troubled sleep, which has an impact on your daily life. Sleep problems seem to persist for a long time. Somewhere between 40 to 60% of postmenopausal women still report sleep problems. So you have to be quite intentional to get help if you are diagnosed with chronic menopause insomnia. Does menopause insomnia go away? For some women, sleep problems are only temporary. For others, menopause insomnia can become chronic, especially if you do nothing about it. The good news is that you don't have to just live with it. Insomnia is actually very treatable. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy work really well, and the results can last for a long time. Hormone therapy can also be a game changer, especially if night sweats are what's keeping you up. And if it turns out to be something like sleep apnea, getting that sorted will make a huge difference in how you feel. How can I sleep better during menopause? It's important to know that your sleep struggles during perimenopause and postmenopause are rarely due to a single factor. It's really a complex cocktail of hormone changes, hot flashes, shifts in mood, and sometimes even undiagnosed sleep apnea. The complexity is exactly why the most effective treatment is one that is tailored to your unique situation. When we look at the data across multiple reviews and clinical trials, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, for insomnia has the strongest evidence. It is recommended as the first-line treatment, and its effects last for a long time. It can help you fall asleep quicker, wake up less during the night, and improve your sleep quality. However, if your sleep is disrupted primarily by hot flashes or night sweats, you should consider hormone replacement therapy. If you cannot or don't want to use HRT, you can ask your doctor about non-hormonal alternatives, like gabapentin or certain low-dose antidepressants that can also effectively reduce hot flashes. But that's really between you and your doctor. If you are over 55, prolonged release melatonin could be an option. It's well tolerated and shows benefits. If you want to understand what's driving your sleep, your focus, your energy, and what you can actually do about it, subscribe. I publish science-based videos every week. Why doesn't melatonin work for me anymore? That's a question I hear all the time. You try melatonin expecting that calming effect and nothing. Actually, it's exactly the same for me. There are some fascinating biological reasons why it feels like it's barely doing anything now. Estrogen and progesterone are key partners that help your brain cells listen to the melatonin signal. Since those hormones are now dropping or fluctuating in perimenopause, the signal, even if you take a supplement, just can't register properly. Your body's still making it, but it can be less effective at getting its message across to the brain. In fact, melatonin sleep system seems to be reorganizing itself after menopause. There was even a strange study showing that postmenopausal women with higher melatonin levels actually experienced worse deep sleep and woke up during REM. That suggests we're not just dealing with a simple deficiency that needs topping up, but a shift in how your brain handles sleep signals. On top of the hormonal changes, melatonin has to fight battles it was never designed to win on its own. It's actually not strong enough to override a hot flash that wakes you up. It also can't override the hyperarousal caused by anxiety or depression. And if you have problems like sleep apnea or restless legs, melatonin will not help. Now, that doesn't mean melatonin is useless. Prolonged release melatonin, usually 2 milligrams, can offer some help, especially for women over 55. At least these were the studies that were done. But the overall clinical evidence is inconsistent, and major guidelines don't recommend it as a primary or standalone solution. If you do take it, studies suggest taking about 3 hours before bedtime. But you can experiment what could work for you. Does melatonin reduce estrogen levels? That is an excellent and honestly a super complex question. The trick is that most of our information comes from lab experiments on cells or from animal studies. There are just not many big and well-designed human trials that we could get information from. The results in animal and in vitro studies are surprisingly inconsistent. In some of those studies, melatonin seems to lower estrogen, and in others, it actually raises it. If you are taking a standalone sleep dose, there is no strong evidence that melatonin suppresses the estrogen you still have. We simply don't know enough about it. Can I take melatonin with HRT? Well, if you're already on hormone therapy and thinking about adding melatonin to your nightly routine, the research is actually quite reassuring. There aren't any major red flags in the data, but there are some fascinating biological interactions that I'd like to tell you about. We've seen several clinical trials where postmenopausal women took around 1 to 3 milligrams of melatonin while on HRT. And there were no major issues. In fact, some of the findings were positive. One study found that estradiol actually helped melatonin regulate stress hormones. So estrogen will make melatonin work more effectively, not less, at least based on the studies we have. The reason is that estrogen seems to increase the bioavailability of melatonin. Most likely, estrogen slows down the enzyme that usually breaks melatonin down. So melatonin stays active longer in your bloodstream. So the bottom line, if you're on HRT, a regular melatonin dose might feel a bit stronger than it would otherwise. It's not really a problem per se, but it's a good reason to start with a lower dose and see how you feel. Then you can adjust. It's really not that difficult. What are the best natural remedies for menopause sleep? When we talk about natural, I'm assuming you mean things that don't need a prescription, right? Or seeing a doctor. So if you're going to try one thing, the research points overwhelmingly to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I know I've repeated it many times, but it's a structured program that actually retrains your sleep timing, your sleep habits, and the thought pattern that keep your brain running at 2 a.m. Research confirms it works specifically for menopausal insomnia. And the best part is the benefits often last for months after you finish the program. Exercise has some solid scientific backing as well. We're talking about regular, low to moderate aerobic activity, things like walking, cycling, or swimming. Studies show that if you exercise several times a week, it improves your sleep quality. Also, other things like mind-body exercises, like yoga, are great because they offer the bonus of reducing the anxiety and tension that often fuel insomnia. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques seem to be quite helpful as well. We even see self-hypnosis programs help. Everybody's favorite melatonin can work as well, but we need to have realistic expectations. It can be helpful for falling asleep and resetting your internal clock, but it's not a knockout pill that some people think it might be. For it to work best, take a low dose about 3 hours before your bedtime. On the lighter side, things like massage or aromatherapy massage have actually been shown to reduce insomnia and depression in several studies with menopausal women. That's your official permission to spend on massage. And one more thing, you could try for free that one clinical trial found to improve both sleep quality and menopause symptoms. Surprise, warm foot baths before bed. The evidence is thin, but seriously, it costs nothing. Finally, we have to talk about the boring but necessary lifestyle levers that can move the needle for you. These are the foundational things that you already know about. Making sure your room is cool and dark, keeping a consistent sleep and wake schedule, and cutting back on evening alcohol, heavy meals, or late caffeine to reduce those nighttime awakenings. Most likely, no single remedy is going to magically fix menopause sleep on its own. But when you combine few evidence-backed strategies, especially using cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, as your foundation, you give yourself the best shot at better nights without needing a prescription. Does magnesium help with menopause insomnia? This is actually quite relevant to me as well. Magnesium is everywhere online, but actual science is more nuanced than what you see online. When we look at trials in older adults, both men and women, magnesium shortened the time it took to fall asleep on average by about 17 minutes. That could be meaningful for you. The studies were quite small and not of great quality, unfortunately. It's important what kind of magnesium you buy, by the way. Magnesium bisglycinate can slightly help with insomnia if taken for over 4 weeks. Magnesium L-threonate was specifically created to improve brain magnesium levels, and some studies show that it can help improve deep sleep and REM cycles, which is great. But again, these are very small studies. Since we don't have enough clinical trials to make any firm conclusions, we can turn to observational data to see what else helps. We've seen that women who eat magnesium-rich diet generally report that they actually sleep better. However, we don't know if the food causes them to sleep better, or is it the magnesium in the food. It's likely that people who focus on magnesium-rich foods also have other healthy habits that support their sleep. We don't have clean clinical trials testing magnesium alone, specifically for menopausal insomnia. I've seen a few studies using cocktail of soy isoflavones, probiotics, and calcium together with 50 milligrams of magnesium. It seems that cocktail might help, but again, the studies are not very big and we don't know what each ingredient is doing. My suggestion would be try it. It's typically safe and see what it does for you. What is the best medicine for sleep during menopause? Let me be straight. Your doc would know best. And what I'm going to cover is not medical advice. There's no single best medication because the right choice depends entirely what's actually waking you up. You need to figure out why you are waking up. If night sweats are your main problem, then hormone replacement therapy is the most logical starting point. Estrogen, especially when delivered via patches or gels, improves sleep quality for many women. However, it isn't a universal fix. Your doctor needs to weigh the benefits against your specific medical history and where you are in the menopause transition. If you can't or prefer not to use hormones, but hot flashes are still an issue, gabapentin might be a solid alternative. It's effective at both reducing flashes and improving sleep. For women over 55, prolonged release melatonin is often recommended as an option. Melatonin doesn't work like a sedative. Instead, it just gently helps regulate your circadian timing. It works best when you combine it with good sleep habits. There are other traditional meds that your doctor could recommend. Ultimately, the most effective treatment is the one that matches your biology. After all of these questions, one thing keeps surfacing. Sleep problems are layered. The women who get real relief are the ones who figure out why their sleep is disrupted, and only then try a solution. So my suggestion is start with the why, then match the treatment to it. If you would like to find out more about why and how sleep is disrupted, check out my video on sleep disruptions. If there's something you're dealing with and you want me to go deeper into how to fix step by step, let me know in the comments. I'll cover it in upcoming videos.